Hello, wanderer, tonight. We slip off our shoes at the threshold of a palace that's seen more secrets than a confession booth during festival week. The sky outside Istanbul is still just a suggestion, soft indigo, the air trembling with that honeyed mix of a morning chill and yesterday's rose petals. You're not lost, don't worry. You're exactly where you need to be, poised somewhere between dream and memory, standing at the ornate, slightly intimidating gates of Topkapi Palace, where the shadows are perfumed and even the dust sparkles with centuries-old gossip. Now, here's a quirky truth to wake up your senses. Did you know the Sultan's harem once housed nearly 300 concubines and about 300,000 rumors, all stuffed into walls decorated with gold and political side-eye? If you think your group chat is chaotic, you've never seen a group of silk-robed contenders debate over who got the last apricot at breakfast. So, tonight, you and I are not just eavesdroppers. We're honored, slightly awkward guests drifting through the gilded, jasmine-laced maze that is the life of an Ottoman harem concubine. If you're listening in the heart of Saigon, or propped against your pillows in Oslo at 1 a.m., leave a sign in the comments a time, a city, your favorite Turkish delight. I love picturing where you're tuning in. Maybe watching the city lights blink while the ghosts of the past start their midnight rehearsals. Dim the lights. Cue the background hum, maybe even light a candle if you're feeling ambitious. And let's wander together before the harem's velvet curtains draw us in. Let the stories of ambition, intrigue, and rosewater baths carry you far from tomorrow's to-do list. You open your eyes, and for a moment, you don't remember where you are until the weight of a quilt that must have cost a small village reminds you this is not your bed back in Des Moines, or Denver, or even that little sunlit room you remember from college. You're lying in a chamber where the ceiling rises up, painted with gold and vines and the sorts of flowers that don't ever wilt. No matter how much time or drama sweeps through this place, the walls are decorated in pale blue tiles. Everyone's set by a craftsman who probably never dreamed his work would someday be the silent witness to so many whispered rivalries. The air itself smells different, like a cross between rosewater and yesterday's secrets. There's a sweetness to it, but also something sharp underneath. Maybe a reminder that in the Ottoman harem, nothing is ever just as it seems. That's the thing about waking up in a palace. It's not peaceful, it's theatrical. You feel like the curtain's about to rise and you, dear listener, are not just the audience, but somehow also cast, crew, and understudy for every role, all around you. The other women are still half dreaming. You can hear a soft symphony of breathing, some gentle, some heavy, some punctuated by the awed snore that nobody will ever dare mention aloud. The youngest girls clutch their silk pillows tight, as if afraid the day might try to steal their dreams. The veterans, those women with hair tucked up in practiced coils and eyes that can read a room faster than a news ticker, are already stirring, stretching their arms with a grace that only comes from years of practice, and perhaps a touch of knowing that the early bird catches the Sultan's eye, or at least avoids the day's worst chores. Your feet find the floor, a rug so thick and soft. You wonder if you're still dreaming. It's the kind of luxury most people might wish for. But here, even comfort is political. Every inch of softness reminds you that this palace is both a sanctuary and a cage. And sometimes, you're not sure which is worse. The first sound that really wakes you is the bell, not some sweet chime or gentle music. No, this is a crisp, commanding clang. The kind that would make even the family dog sit up and take notice. The message is clear. The day is not yours. Not really. It belongs to the hierarchy, to the routines, to the traditions older than the creaking hinges on these ancient doors. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to transform from sleepy mortal into a vision of imperial perfection. You move quickly, not because you want to, but because you must. There's no privacy here. Privacy is for the wealthy and the powerful. And you, for all the gold and silk around you, are neither. You share your sleeping space with dozens, sometimes hundreds of women, each of whom is just as nervous, just as hopeful, just as wary as you. You splash water on your face. It's cold, shockingly so. The jolt snaps you fully into the present. You reach for the rose oil, dabbing it carefully onto your skin. As the older women always said, it keeps the wrinkles away. They claim, of course, Nobody in the palace ever really gets old, if you survive long enough for gray hair and crow's feet. You're either one of the very lucky or very clever few. You press a bit of pearl powder onto your cheeks, and then line your eyes with kohl, thick as night. Someone behind you huffs, not out of impatience but out of habit. Maybe she's jealous of your technique, or maybe she just doesn't like you here. It's usually a little of both. You choose your robe with the care of a politician picking a tie before a debate. Blue. Too bold for a newcomer. Gold. You're not that foolish. Something in the middle, soft rose. Embroidered at the cuffs. The fabric feels cool and smooth under your fingers. A tiny pleasure in a day otherwise loaded with tension. Now, the morning hush is starting to break. You catch the low murmur of gossip already floating across the room. No one says anything too loud, but the air vibrates with rumor who got a note from the Valide Sultan who's been moved to a better chamber, who left in the middle of the night and hasn't come back. If you ever think you're immune to gossip, try sharing a bathroom with 200 anxious, ambitious women. You'll be trading secrets in no time, just to survive. Someone singing softly a melody that sounds like it might have floated over the mountains from the other side of the world. You catch the tune, and for a moment, you're reminded that every woman here once had another life, a family, a language, maybe even a sweetheart waiting somewhere far beyond the palace gates. Those stories don't come out often, when they do. It's usually whispered under the covers, late at night, with someone keeping watch at the door for eavesdropping eunuchs. And about the eunuchs, you can hear their footsteps in the hallway measured, unhurried, with just enough authority to remind you that your freedom stops at the edge of the rug. They're the guardians here, keepers of secrets, brokers of small favors, and, occasionally, deliverers of doom. You learn quickly that being polite to a eunuch costs nothing and could save you everything. Time's almost up. The bell rings again, sharper this time, like the tap of a judge's gavel in a courtroom. You join the stream of concubines filing out of the sleeping quarters, each of you arranged in the hierarchy as invisible and immutable as gravity. The veterans lead the way, shoulders squared, eyes front. The newcomers bring up the rear, stealing nervous glances and praying to any god who might be listening. The corridor is bright now, flooded with light that bounces off mosaics and silver filigree. You catch your reflection in a polished brass tray carried by a servant. You look regal, but your heart is hammering in your chest, loud as a snare drum in a marching band. You straighten your shoulders, smoothing the front of your robe as if to brush away the nerves, and keep moving. You're herded, no. That's not quite right, but it's close into the main assembly room for roll call. You catch the faintest whiff of something baking in the palace kitchens, sweet and spicy and just out of reach. Your stomach rumbles, and you wonder if this will be a day of plenty or a day when you're lucky to snag a second helping of figs. You try not to think too hard about what comes next. In the harem, hope is a slippery thing. Maybe today will be the day you catch the Sultan's eye, or maybe it will be another day spent in lessons and longing, in petty squabbles and practiced smiles. But you are here, in this gilded cage, awake and alive and, for now, one step ahead of obscurity. So, you take a breath deep, steady, filling your lungs with air scented by centuries of ambition and anxiety. You look around, and you see not rivals, but survivors, women who have learned. As you are learning, that beauty is power, and power is survival. And sometimes, survival is the greatest victory of all. The sun climbs higher, the shadows shrink, and the palace comes to life. Somewhere in the city beyond, a merchant calls out his wares. In here, the real commerce is in glances, favors, and the silent calculations of 100 hidden hopes. You have made it through the first hour. You are still here. For now, that is enough. You shuffle forward in the slow-moving current of silk and perfume, pressed elbow to elbow with women whose names you may never know and whose ambitions you could sketch in the dark. The corridor leading to the main hall is long enough that you have time to take in every detail, the way sunlight cuts across the mosaic tiles, setting the tiny glass pieces ablaze with blues, golds, and the deep red of pomegranates, the soft thud of slippers against polished marble, the low chorus of morning voices, all pitched just below the threshold of outright gossip. Even the air tastes like anticipation, maybe. with a hint of something more nervous underneath, like fear wrapped in cinnamon, at the head of the line. A pair of eunuchs dressed in the imperial livery of midnight blue and silver, eyes sharp as razors, stand ready with their ledgers. You don't need reminding these men hold the power to shape your day, to send you toward a morning of music and poetry, or to exile you to the laundry rooms, where the only melody is the slap of wet linen and the hiss of soap. Sometimes, you wonder if the palace laundresses ever sing revenge ballads into the steam. As you edge into the main hall, the volume of the crowd swells, but nobody dares speak above a whisper. It's a game. How much can you communicate with a sideways glance, a half tilt of the chin, a cough that's just a little too dramatic? You look left and catch the eye of the girl from Crimea, the one with the dimple and the talent for embroidery. She flashes you a smile that says, "Don't worry, you'll get through this." But her eyes are already tracking who stands nearest to the door leading to the Sultan's chambers. You look right, and there's the trio of sisters from somewhere east of the Caspian, braiding each other's hair with the casual, silent efficiency of women who have shared everything bed, bread, and bad luck for years. The hall itself is so big you can barely see the far wall through the forest of columns and the shimmering light that slants down from high-set windows. The ceilings arch overhead in a display of architectural bravado, if you ever doubted the Sultan's ego. Just count the layers of gold leaf overhead. A flock of doves roosts in the rafters, cooing softly, oblivious to the theater below, and it is a theater. Make no mistake, you've never seen so many carefully arranged smiles in one place. Every woman here is an actress, every gesture practiced, every laugh measured. If you could bottle the tension in the room, you'd have something twice as strong as the palace wine and 4 times as dangerous. At the front, the head eunuch clears his throat, a sound that could halt a stampede, and the entire room falls silent. You notice he carries a slender cane, more ornament than weapon, but no one doubts the authority it represents. His ledger snaps open, the parchment inside filled with names in a calligraphy so precise it looks like it was written by someone who's never spilled a drop of ink in his life. He calls the roll, each name echoing off the tiles, followed by the soft reply, "Here," or "Sometimes." A silence so heavy you wonder if someone's just slipped off the edge of the world when your name is called. You answer with the right mix of confidence and humility. Too loud, and you're marked as brash. Too soft, and you're invisible. You say it just so, meeting the eunuch's gaze for a heartbeat before letting your eyes drift to the floor, as custom demands. He nods, a gesture so small it could be mistaken for a spasm, if not for the power it carries. Roll call, you've come to realize, is about more than names. It's an inventory of alliances, a census of favors owed and grudges nursed. Each answer is weighed and filed away, not just in the ledger, but in the minds of everyone present. You feel it in the way women shuffle, the way the oldest concubines stand slightly apart, nodding to each other as if sharing a secret joke about youth and ambition, and how little either one lasts. Sometimes, a woman's name isn't called when that happens. No one reacts. Eyes stay fixed on the mosaic floor. Mouths remain neutral, but you can hear the ripple in the room, the sharp intake of breath, the way people tense, just for a moment. Maybe she's been summoned by the Valid Sultan. Maybe she's been reassigned to a distant estate. Maybe she's just gone erased, as if she never existed. Her name brushed away like chalk on a slate. But the show must go on. Once the roll is finished, the real business begins. The head eunuch starts to assign duties: who will join the morning lessons in poetry, who is expected to assist in the kitchens, who will attend the Valid Sultan's tea. You listen, keeping your expression carefully neutral, though your heart thumps every time your name is mentioned. Today, you're to be sent to the gardens for flower gathering. It's a small mercy, better than laundry, not as lucky as music lessons. But at least the air will be fresh, and you'll get to watch the city waking up beyond the palace walls. As the crowd breaks up, you make your way toward the door, dodging a girl who's burst into tears, whether from relief or disappointment. You can't say. Nobody stops to comfort her. Kindness here is rationed, spent cautiously, as if every gentle gesture must be weighed against a future favor. The gardens await, their paths winding through roses, tulips, and orange trees heavy with fruit. But as you leave the hall, you glance back one last time and catch the eye of an older concubine, the kind who's survived half a dozen sultans and twice as many power struggles. She raises an eyebrow, a gesture that says, "Learn fast, don't trust too quickly, and never, ever get too comfortable." You nod, the silent agreement passing between you like the flicker of a candle flame. Outside, the air is bright and cool, a balm after the pressure cooker intensity of the roll call. You breathe deep, letting the scents of mint and jasmine chase away the last of your nerves. In the palace, every moment is a negotiation. Every smile, every bowed head, every carefully chosen word is a move in a game with no clear rules and no guaranteed winners. But for now, you have your assignment, your dignity, and the luxury of a few moments under the open sky, in the palace. That's more than most can ask for. You pause, letting the sunlight settle on your shoulders, feeling the tension drain away just a little. The day is just beginning. The stories, the alliances, the rivalries, they're all waiting. But for this breath, at least, you are simply here, alive. A small piece in the grand mosaic of the Ottoman harem, a hush, and breathe. You move down the hall, slippers sliding across cool tile, and there's no escaping it. Now the air itself starts to thicken, picking up a damp, floral heaviness as you cross the threshold into the palace hammam. If there's a single room in the whole Topkapi labyrinth that runs on pure contradiction, this is it. Part sanctuary, part surveillance zone, equal parts beauty parlor and Shark Tank. The steam hits you first, warm and gentle, then almost greedy, curling into your hair and fogging the edge of your vision until the world looks like it's been dipped in milk and sprinkled with rosewater. There's a subtle, almost ritual choreography as you enter. The women ahead of you untie their embroidered towels and slip them off their shoulders with the ease of old pros, chatting softly about the weather, the latest musical fashions. And because this is the harem, whose cousin just got reassigned to the kitchens for unladylike behavior, you join the procession, suddenly self-conscious about your posture, your elbows, even your toes. Nothing brings out the inner critic quite like being naked with 200 ambitious strangers. The marble underfoot is slick with condensation, but someone's gone to the trouble of strewing mint leaves near the central fountain. You wonder for a moment if it's for the scent, or to keep people from slipping a little from column A, a little from column B. The hammam attendants, all brisk efficiency and gentle hands, pass among the women, distributing handfuls of olive oil soap and small, scratchy loofahs that look innocent enough until they start scrubbing. The feeling is somewhere between affectionate and vengeful, like being sanded by a loving aunt with unresolved childhood issues. Still, there's no denying the effect. You emerge tingling, every nerve awake, your skin so clean it practically squeaks. But don't be fooled. This is not just about hygiene. Not here. The hammam is where information travels fastest, and secrets slip from mouths as easily as soap from your palm. You overhear everything: which girl got a new pair of slippers suspicious, who's been summoned twice this week scandalous, which eunuch tripped on a stray cat in the corridor and has yet to recover his dignity. Hilarious. The old women, the ones with more silver in their hair than pearls on their shoes, cluster together near the warmest marble, sharing stories that start with when the last sultan reigned, and end in a kind of communal sigh, as if time itself is something to be measured out in cups of jasmine tea. You spot the bath's unofficial social director, a woman known for her ability to orchestrate friendships and feuds with a well-timed compliment, or a conveniently forgotten towel. She smiles at you, warm as sunshine and twice as dangerous. You nod, remembering the rule of the hammam: everyone's watching. But nobody ever admits it. Even the way women group themselves is political. The youngest cluster shyly by the cold pool, stealing glances at the older girls, who sprawl with calculated grace, confident that they can take up as much space as they please. The favorites, those rare, luminous creatures who've caught the Sultan's eye more than once, float among the marble benches like swans, radiant and untouchable, yet watching everything, always, when they laugh. You listen for the joke, when they fall silent. You wonder what plot is being spun beneath the sound of dripping water every now and then. A ripple of silence passes through the room, so sharp you could shave with it. It's usually a sign that someone important a favored concubine, or worse. The Valide Sultan herself has entered the steam. You bow your head, pretend to study your cuticles, and hope the attention passes you by like a bad cold. Yet the hammam is also a kind of sanctuary, a space where the constant pressure of palace life lets up for a breath or two. You sink onto the warm marble, closing your eyes as the attendant works rose-scented oil into your scalp. The gentle scratching of her fingers is hypnotic. It almost makes you forget you're in the middle of the most competitive women's club on earth. Almost. Someone nearby is humming a tune you recognize from a lullaby your mother used to sing, though she's probably added a verse or two about how to spot a backstabber and keep your laundry from being stolen. The melody drifts up, mingling with the hiss of steam and the slap-slap of water in copper bowls. Somewhere behind you, two girls are whispering, their words sliding through the fog. She said what, no, not to her face, but everyone knows. Besides, her new caftan is proof enough no one gets rose silk unless the rest is lost. Drowned out by the sudden laughter of the woman with the gold tooth, her amusement echoing off the high domed ceiling. Your mind wanders. Piecing together bits of rumor and fragments of advice, always sit one bench away from the marble pillar. Good acoustics. Bad visibility. Never accept scented oil from a girl who never sweats. She's up to something. Avoid the window seats unless you want a cold draft down your back and 100 prying eyes on your reflection. When it's time to leave, the attendants wrap you in a towel, warm from the coals, and press a slice of orange into your palm, sticky and sweet. You walk out into the cool hallway, cheeks pink, hair damp, and feel for a fleeting moment like you belong, like you're part of the club, even if it's a club where the initiation never really ends. Outside, the morning is brighter, the palace corridors echo with fresh voices, and the real games, the alliances, the flirtations, the quiet rivalries pick up where the steam left off. The hammam, after all, is just the first round. The day is long, and there are many ways to shine or slip before sundown. You pause in the hallway, towel tight around your shoulders, a thin plume of steam trailing behind you like a fading secret. The scents of jasmine, mint, and hot stone linger on your skin. You catch your own reflection in a polished brass tray, eyes clear, lips smiling, cheeks flushed with something more than heat. For now. You've survived the bathhouse. You've learned a little, listened a lot, and maybe left a rumor or two swirling in your wake. A hush. And breathe. So, you've survived the morning parade and emerged from the hammam with skin smoother than a politician's promise. Congratulations. You're officially ready for the most treacherous landscape in the Ottoman palace, not the gardens, not the kitchens, but the shifting, invisible terrain of friendship, rivalry, and ever so casual sabotage. If you think being a concubine is all about fluttering a fan and waiting to be noticed, well, let's just say you might want to keep one eye open and both hands on your embroidery hoop. Here's the first lesson you learn in a world with 200 women and only one sultan. Popularity is as slippery as fresh olive oil. Real friendship is rare, and alliances are about as stable as a tower of Turkish delight left out in the sun. You spot your first friend, let's call her Lael, because everyone here is either named after a flower or a virtue their mother once hoped they'd live up to. Lael is clever, fast with a joke, and even faster with a needle. She claims to love embroidery, but you're pretty sure she uses those long hours stitching to gather intel. Nothing escapes her sharp eyes, not even your slightly crooked hem. You share a smile, exchange a few words about last night's meal. I'm convinced they're recycling the lamb stew at this point, and agree to meet later for music practice. But even as you chat, you're aware of the subtle currents running through the room. Another girl glances up from her sewing with an expression that says, she'd be happy to knot your thread for you permanently. You nod at her, polite as ever. But you know better than to turn your back. Gossip, here, moves like wildfire in a pine forest, fueled by boredom, ambition, and an endless supply of pomegranate seeds. It starts small. Someone saw you in a new robe. Someone else heard you were summoned to the Valide Sultan's chamber. Someone swears you laughed a little too loudly at the wrong joke. Suddenly, A rumor is born, and by dinner, it's grown arms, legs, and an embarrassing backstory. Of course, everyone gossips. You're not above it, either. Sometimes, sharing a tidbit is the only way to buy a little peace, or to nudge someone else onto the palace's ever-slippery who's up, who's down list. The trick is never to be caught spreading the wrong story, or to be the last person holding the secret when the music stops. That's how girls end up reassigned to laundry duty, or worse, teaching loot to the new arrivals. And then there are the favors. Everything in the harem is transactional, from the way you pass a slice of candied orange to the way you offer a compliment about someone's embroidery, never too enthusiastic. Of course, or you'll be accused of sarcasm. A favor here is never just a favor. You help someone with her hair, and next week she helps you accidentally swap your kitchen chore for a much cozier spot folding towels. You share a secret recipe for rosewater hand cream, and she forgets to mention your name when the eunuchs are looking for someone to blame for the missing headscarf. But with every kindness comes a price, and the balance sheet is never closed. Maybe Lael lets slip that she heard something about your seating arrangement at dinner, and you realize you've moved half a cushion closer to the inner circle, not enough to draw attention, but enough to be noticed by the girls who keep score. Suddenly, you're in play, and every word you say or don't say will be measured, weighed, and dissected over sherbet that evening. You learn to watch, to listen, to keep your voice soft and your laughter even softer, sometimes. You're bold enough to make a joke, the kind that floats over the heads of the older women and lands quietly with the sharpest girls in the room. If they smile, you've passed another invisible test. If not, well, best to stick to reciting poetry and feigning a headache at dinner. The real power, though, lies with the eunuchs. These silent, watchful guardians glide through the palace like ghosts with excellent posture. They see everything, every smile, every sulk, every sideways glance, and report it straight to the Valid Sultan. If you want to survive, you don't flatter them, you don't gossip about them, you certainly don't try to bribe them unless you want to see the inside of the laundry room for the next 3 months. No, the smart move is to be predictable, useful, and above all, invisible when they're looking for trouble. Sometimes, you're drawn into a more complicated dance. A girl from the kitchens needs a favor. She wants to trade embroidery for poetry lessons. And in return, she'll sneak you an extra orange at breakfast. It's a small thing, but in the harem, small things matter a cushion here, a slice of fruit there, a secret passed from hand to hand. Before you know it, you've woven yourself into a web of tiny obligations, and you pray none of them stick when the winds change direction. Every now and then, you get caught in the crossfire of other people's battles. Maybe someone leaves a hairpin in your basket, or a scarf goes missing just after you walked by. It's easy to become collateral damage in a feud you barely understand. The best defense, a sweet smile, a ready apology, and the ability to fade into the background until the next scandal erupts. And yet, for all the tension and the chess-like maneuvering, there are moments unexpected, soft as dusk, when real friendship glimmers through. Maybe Lael shares a story about her childhood, the one with the goat who used to follow her everywhere. Or maybe you find yourself laughing, really laughing, with a girl who's just as homesick as you are. These moments are rare and precious, tucked away like little gold coins in the purse of your heart. You guard them carefully, because here, kindness is both a treasure and a risk. By late afternoon, the palace is filled with the golden haze of sunlight and the chatter of women practicing music. Poetry and etiquette drifts through the corridors. You sit beside Lael, working on your embroidery, and for a brief, golden moment, you almost forget the ever-present tension. You're just two girls, stitching tulips into linen, telling jokes, and dreaming, quietly, of something better. A hush. And breathe. Let's not kid ourselves. If you thought landing in the Ottoman Harem was just about lying on velvet pillows and waiting for your big break, like a reality show contestant who accidentally wandered into a palace, think again. Welcome to the harem's other great institution, education. Except instead of reading, writing, and arithmetic, you get poetry, etiquette, religious studies, and the life or death art of not attracting the wrong kind of attention. the first thing you learn, right after you're handed your starter caftan and warned to keep your opinions about the decor to yourself, is that everything in the harem is training. Every single thing. You think you're learning to dance, but what you're really learning is how to move through a crowded room without bumping into someone who might take it personally. And here, trust me, everyone takes everything personally. You think you're learning to recite verses of Rumi or Hafiz, but what you're really memorizing is the ability to say a lot without actually saying anything at all, an essential skill when surrounded by 200 women who could turn a compliment into a duel with nothing more than an eyebrow. The day begins, again, with a bell. But this time, it's not for grooming, it's for roll call. A senior eunuch stands by with his ledger, calling names like he's taking attendance at a particularly ambitious book club. You stand perfectly still, hoping you're interesting enough to keep, but not so interesting you get called out. It's an art. This balance standing straight, eyes lowered, hands folded so precisely that Martha Stewart would cry tears of joy. Then it's time for lessons. The harem, as it turns out, has a curriculum that would put finishing schools to shame. Music, poetry, history, religion, languages, needlework, calligraphy, court etiquette, and my personal favorite, the mysterious. Mystical proper way to pour sherbet without making a scene. Imagine a room filled with women, each pretending to care deeply about the exact angle at which a silver tray should be held, while secretly checking who's watching whom and who's wearing last season's slippers. If you can do all that and not spill a drop, you've mastered the basics, your first-class Ottoman etiquette. There are rules for everything, from how to bow not too deep, not too shallow, just enough so you don't look like you're auditioning for the ballet to the precise number of times you're allowed to smile during morning recitation. Hint not as often as you think, and definitely never at the wrong person. The instructor, a formidable woman who looks like she could flatten dough with a glare, explains that dignity is your armor, silence your shield, and patience your secret weapon. You jot that down mentally, right next to never trust anyone who offers you extra baklava out of nowhere. Then comes music. The harem is filled with the gentle twang of the oud, the delicate trill of the ney flute, the shimmering strum of the kanun. You're handed a lute. It's heavier than you expect. And your first attempt at a scale sounds like you're strangling a chicken. But nobody laughs openly. At least, here. Every lesson is a test. The real exam isn't about your musical skills, but whether you can keep your cool when the girl beside you accidentally retunes your instrument, or when the teacher's favorite just happens to get the solo. Next up, poetry. The harem is as thick with metaphors as a southern diner is with gravy. You practice reciting lines about nightingales, roses, the moon, and unrequited love, always with the right amount of sighing. Never too little, never too much. You're taught to memorize whole pages, not because anyone really cares whether you remember the verse, but because everyone is watching to see how you perform under pressure. Do you fumble your lines? Do you blush? Do you handle a forgotten word with a witty rhyme? Or do you turn red as pomegranate jelly? These are the things that matter. And then, of course, there's the great art of not being noticed. You'd think the goal in a place like this would be to stand out. Wrong. The goal is to stand out just enough, but never so much that you look like you're trying. The masters of the harem, the women who've survived 5, 10, 15 years are the ones who know how to be simultaneously visible and invisible, present but unthreatening, always around, never in the way. It's like being a living, breathing, perfumed shadow. In another life, you might have made an excellent stagehand or a highly successful middle child. There are practical lessons too. Needlework. Naturally, you're expected to stitch tulips into linen, embroider Quranic verses on silk handkerchiefs, and mend torn cuffs with the dexterity of a cat burglar and the patience of a saint. If you can manage not to poke yourself with the needle while keeping up a polite conversation about Persian miniatures, you're already ahead of the game. Religious studies come next. Here, you learn Quranic verses, prayers, and the ins and outs of fasting, always under the watchful gaze of a tutor who can spot irreverence from a mile away. Don't get caught daydreaming. Unless you want to end up memorizing extra surahs as character building. Sometimes, you think, even the nuns at Catholic school would have taken notes from these ladies. And somewhere, between lessons, meals, and nervous glances. You begin to realize that this place is less a school and more a lifelong audition, every day. You're being watched, weighed, and, yes, judged. Maybe you're moved a little closer to the head of the table. Maybe you're passed over for a performance. Maybe. Just maybe. You're noticed by the Valide Sultan herself, and suddenly you're on a whole new level of scrutiny. Through it all, you cling to the small victories, a perfectly executed bow, a needlework pattern praised by your instructor, a quiet moment in the garden where nobody is watching and you can breathe. You learn that survival here is less about beauty or talent, and more about the subtle magic of reading the room, of speaking just enough, of knowing when to smile and when to disappear. As the day draws to a close and the lessons wind down, you glance around at your fellow students. Some look tired, others tense. A few wear secret, satisfied smiles, the look of someone who's just passed a hidden test or sidestepped a subtle trap. You gather your books, smooth your skirt, and step into the twilight corridors, your mind buzzing with new rules, old fears, and the faint hope that tomorrow you'll be just a little wiser, a little more invisible, and a lot more ready for whatever the harem throws at you next. A hush. And breathe. There are two kinds of fear in the harem, and neither comes with a warning label. The first is easy to spot, the prickly, cold sweat-inducing terror that flares up the moment someone with real power, let's say, a steely-eyed eunuch or the Valide Sultan's favorite, suddenly looks your way. If you've ever been a kid caught red-handed with your hand in the cookie jar, multiply that by 100, add the scent of rose oil and the hum of whispered gossip, and you're getting close. That's the fear of being noticed. The second kind is slower, softer, but just as deadly, the dread that comes from being invisible for too long, from fading into the wallpaper, from going unmentioned, unsummoned, unremarked upon, until one day you simply aren't there, in the harem. This is the fate worse than death. If you disappear from the conversation, you're already halfway gone, and the world behind the palace doors has a long memory for those who fade, but no mercy for those who fall. Let's start with the first kind, the danger of standing out. This is the one everyone warns you about, whether in the trembling voice of your new friend from Circassia or the low, conspiratorial mutters that drift through the morning roll call. You're taught to avoid making yourself a target, and yet, the moment you're handed a new robe, a suspiciously beautiful thing, perhaps pink silk with gold embroidery, or a sash that glitters a little too much, you know you've stepped into dangerous territory. It could be a reward, or it could be a test. Sometimes, in the palace, they're the same thing. You slip on the robe, it fits perfectly, which is unsettling in itself. As you step into the hallway, you feel every glance, every pause in conversation, every half-hidden smile. No one says a word, but their eyes do all the talking. It's like middle school. If middle school were run by Machiavelli and scented with jasmine, later that morning, a eunuch, one of the important ones, the kind who makes even the most senior concubines snap to attention, delivers a single, flawless pink rose to your room. No message, no explanation, just a flower, perfumed with mystery and the faintest hint of peril. Is it from the Sultan? Is it from someone who wants it to look like it's from the Sultan? Is it an innocent gesture? Or a mark that you've just become the main character in a subplot nobody asked for? You press the rose between the pages of your prayer book and tell absolutely no one. If your shadow tries to gossip, you ignore her. 2. In the harem. Silence is sometimes your only shield. But as the day wears on, you notice the shift. At breakfast, your seat has moved a little closer to the center. Your sherbet is colder than anyone else's. And the girls who once ignored you now want to share their favorite verses of Persian poetry. Or maybe just find out if you're still a safe person to be seen with. Your enemies, and let's be honest, everyone here is a frenemy, at minimum nod more politely. The ones with real power, they don't show any expression at all, which is even more terrifying. You've become visible, for the moment. At least, you exist on the map. Your name is whispered more often. You catch your own reflection in a polished brass tray and half expect to see someone else, a version of yourself, that is suddenly interesting. Possibly dangerous. Definitely under surveillance. Now. For the second fear, the slow fade, the fear of being overlooked. This one sneaks up on you. It's not as sharp, not as dramatic. It's more like the quiet hush that falls when a popular song ends and nobody rushes to start the next one. One day, you realize nobody's asked your opinion about the poetry recitation. Your tray is set farther and farther from the action. The other girls' conversations swirl around you, their laughter never quite including you, as if you're a ghost still wearing last season's caftan. You do everything right, show up on time, answer when spoken to, embroider your tulips with extra care, but somehow you're drifting to the edges. And nobody seems to notice. In the palace, that's a warning bell you don't want to ignore. You find yourself walking slower, hoping someone will call your name, even if it's only for towel duty or, heaven forbid, another round of lute lessons. You start to wonder which is worse, being noticed for the wrong thing, or not being noticed at all. Sometimes the answer changes by the hour. The older women, those who've survived 5 or 10 years, understand both kinds of fear. Some have mastered the art of strategic modesty, floating just beneath the surface, never too quiet, never too loud, always there, but never the subject of palace rumors. Others have scars from the times they rose too quickly or faded too fast. You study their faces, looking for clues, hoping you can learn the secret handshake of survival. And then there's the wild card, the Sultan, every night. As the lamps are dimmed and the fountains outside the window murmur softly, there's a whisper that tonight could be the night your name is called. Or maybe not. Maybe it never will be. The anticipation is almost as bad as the disappointment. A kind of emotional purgatory where you never know if you're up next or already forgotten, if you're lucky. You get used to the tension. You start to treat it like a game of backgammon played with invisible dice. One day you're in, the next day you're out, and every move is watched, measured, calculated. But even as you learn to surf the tides of attention, a third kind of fear creeps in, the fear of losing yourself. The longer you stay, the more you adapt to the rules, the etiquette, the rituals of self-erasure and strategic silence. You remember less and less about who you were before, the sound of your real name, the feel of a morning without scheming or suspicion. The harem shapes you, polishes you, tucks you into its labyrinth of velvet and intrigue until you fit perfectly into its grand, invisible design. And yet, as you lie awake, listening to the distant laughter and the faint sound of a lute, you still wonder, is it better to be seen, even if it's dangerous, or to disappear so completely that no one remembers you were ever here at all? For now, you pull your robe tighter, breathe in the scent of rose water, and remind yourself tomorrow is another day. And the game begins again. A hush, and breathe. Let's set the table, shall we? Or rather, let's glide into a palace dining chamber where dinner is never just about eating. You step through an archway, toes barely making a whisper on polished tile, and the air is already thick with anticipation and cinnamon. This is not your family's Thanksgiving, unless your family always had 200 silently feuding cousins, 3 professional spies, and more jewelry than a Vegas showroom. If you're picturing a long, groaning banquet table, think again. The harem's dining chamber is a soft constellation of low tables, gleaming trays, and heaps of silk cushions in every color you didn't know existed. Gold threads shimmer in candlelight. Saffron floats on the air. You take your seat not too close to the center. That's for the truly favored, not too far on the edge, where even the figs look depressed. The seating itself is a game, every night a new arrangement. Every placement a silent signal. Tonight, you're sandwiched between the lute player's apprentice whose only notable skill is pretending to enjoy endless scales and a concubine with eyes as sharp as sewing needles. Her earrings jingle when she laughs, which is rare and only when someone else's fortune has just changed. You nod. She does not nod back. It's that kind of evening. As you fold your knees beneath you, bowls arrive delivered by eunuchs who move with a choreography so precise you'd swear they're gliding, not walking. The food looks almost too beautiful to eat. Almost saffron rice, pomegranate-studded pilaf, grape leaves folded with more care than some treaties, and little candied fruits that seem to wink in the lamplight. The sherbet tonight is pale green mint and rose, cool as the first night breeze after a hot summer day. You sip and pretend you don't care how delicious it is. That's important. Real delight is reserved for poetry, not pudding. You glance around, no one is eating quickly. Speed is vulgar, hunger is weakness, and gluttony. Well, that's just asking for a rumor about your future. You nibble, with perfect posture, on a cube of lamb glazed with honey and sumac, and tell yourself, it's enough. Actually, it is enough. But you let the illusion of self-denial linger. The only thing you're truly starved for is information. And tonight, as on every night, the room is a simmering pot of secrets. The conversation, if you can call it that, is a tapestry woven from soft laughter, quiet murmurs, and the occasional daggered glance. Nobody raises their voice. Nobody asks questions with answers that matter. Did you enjoy the poetry reading is met with? Of course, the calligraphy was inspiring, which is code for no, and I'm too smart to say so. Compliments are currency, but everyone checks them for counterfeits. Suddenly, the tension rises. A eunuch enters the room, one of the senior ones, his robe lined with velvet, his expression carved from marble. Everyone's spine straightens an inch if he walks your way. A message, a summons, or a letter might follow if he doesn't. You have another night of rest or, worse, another night of waiting. Tonight, he sweeps past, heading toward a cluster of senior favorites. You let your breath out slow, as if this was always the plan. You look down at your tray and realize you've barely touched your rice. Your neighbor, let's call her the Duchess of Eyebrow, raises, tilts her head just enough to let you know she's seen. Is she judging your appetite, your restraint, or just noting that you haven't picked up the suspiciously large fig on your plate? In the harem, a fig is never just a fig. It's a metaphor, a test, maybe even an inside joke you haven't learned yet. You recall last week's story. One girl reached for her second piece of bread, and by dawn, half the palace was whispering about her secret pregnancy, her family debts, her apparent lack of self-control, and her suspicious fondness for carbs. You smile at the fig, but you do not touch it. Instead, you engage in the great harem sport, watching the watchers. You clock who gets the largest portion of sherbet tonight, the senior lute player, who only pretends to eat the Valide Sultan's cousin, as usual, and who looks pale and tired, dangerously close to reassignment to towel duty. Dinner is theater, but it's also a battleground, minus the swords. Every glance is a negotiation. Every pause is a line in the unspoken play. When the new girl across the table smiles, it's with the kind of careful planning that goes into a royal garden, every petal, every leaf in its place, nothing left to chance. She has the look of someone who's been plotting her next 5 moves since the appetizers. You break eye contact, wisely. In the harem, long gazes are only for enemies or lovers, and tonight you want neither. Instead, you try out a small, polite nod. It's met with nothing more than a blink, a subtle rebuff, or just nerves, impossible to tell. But you file it away in your mental scroll for later. There's a moment, near the end of the meal, when the chatter grows soft, almost reverent. The eunuchs return, collecting trays, their faces unreadable. The only sound is the gentle clink of glass and the distant burble of a fountain outside. You could almost forget, for one breath, that this room is a crucible of ambition and anxiety. But then you see it, a small note, folded once and slipped beneath your tray. You don't touch it, not yet. Someone is watching, and besides, you've learned patience. Notes here are rarely love letters. More often, they're warnings, instructions, or invitations to a poetry reading you must not refuse. You leave it for now, just a bit of folded paper, weightless and heavy at the same time. By the time you rise, bow, and leave the dining chamber, nothing has happened, and yet, everything has happened. The seating has shifted. The alliances have twitched. Someone has been marked for tomorrow's gossip. Someone else will not be called for morning roll. You, for tonight, remain in the game, hungry in spirit, and somehow, still smiling. You glide out into the corridor, the scent of cinnamon and anxiety trailing behind. The harem is never truly asleep, and as you walk to your chamber, you realize that the real feast is not on the table, but in the air, the invisible threads of power, jealousy, and hope, woven tighter with every meal. A hush, and you breathe. Night. If the harem is a theater, then darkness is when the curtain drops and everyone scrambles for their next role. hoping the director isn't in a murderous mood. You step out of the dining hall, taste pomegranate lingering on your tongue, and the lamps in the corridor are flickering just enough to make every painted tile on the wall look like it's swimming. The palace is quieter now, sure, but it's a careful sort of quiet, the way a chessboard is quiet when all the best moves are yet to come. You slip through a forest of archways, following a procession of sleepy girls shuffling back to their quarters. There's always the softest trace of rosewater in the air, the faintest thread of anxiety, and the odd snatch of giggling behind hands. Somewhere, someone's slippers slap a little too loudly against the marble, and you wince in sympathy. Noise, after dinner, is a liability. People remember the sound of nervous feet. Your chamber is just as you left it, a small kingdom of cushions and faded tapestries, an oil lamp on a carved wooden stand, and, if you're lucky, a window that actually lets in a slice of moonlight. Your roommate, let's call her Aish, is already curled up with her back to you, hair spilling over her shoulder like a warning. You know her dreams are just as crowded as yours, full of missed chances, mysterious smiles, and the faint hope of a letter slid under the door. You shed your day's embroidery like it's a suit of armor, slip into linen, and sink onto your cot, out in the halls. The palace continues its nocturnal murmur. You try to close your eyes, but this is not a house for sleeping easy. There's always a rumor flapping through the air, like a moth searching for someone's ear. Tonight, the talk is about the girl who sat 3 cushions from the center at dinner. Apparently, she received a pearl comb from a secret admirer, which in harem speak means either she's been noticed by someone powerful, or someone wants everyone to think she has, or she's been set up for a fall so elaborate even Scheherazade would pause and take notes. In the palace, no one trusts a pearl with no string attached. You listen, not to the words those fade, but to the patterns, the rise and fall of voices, the sighs, the way laughter sticks around just a second too long, betraying nerves. That's how you know the real stories, who's anxious, who's hopeful, who's given up. You think back to the note folded under your tray at dinner. You haven't read it, yet you will. Once the sounds outside thin out. Once Aishi's breathing settles into the soft, regular rhythm of "at least I'm alive tonight." You lie there, fingers tracing the weave of your linen sheet. The night outside is velvet black, punctuated by the occasional bark of a palace dog, or the plunk of a late-night lute in the distant quarters of the favored musicians. The sound is comforting. It means the world is still spinning, and you're still inside it, not out in the cold. The palace's real business happens now. In these hush hours, eunuchs pad softly up and down the corridors, checking doors, delivering missives, collecting rumors. Their keys jingle softly, a lullaby for the ambitious. You hear footsteps stop outside your door. A heart thumps, maybe yours, maybe Aishi's. The door does not open. This time, you let your breath out slowly. This is what night is, a game of roulette, played with silence and half-remembered names. You wonder, will it be your turn tonight? The Sultan chooses at his whim, or maybe according to a system only the stars and the Valid Sultan can decipher. No one knows. Girls disappear for an hour, a night, sometimes forever. Sometimes they come back with stories, sometimes just new jewelry and a fresh set of enemies. You drift for a moment, letting your thoughts unspool like thread in the darkness. Your old life seems distant now, a hazy mosaic of sun-bleached streets, the smell of bread baking in the morning. Your mother's laugh, was it that high and nervous? Or did you just imagine it? You remember goats, mud on your hem, a world where ambition meant saving for your own dowry, not trying to interpret the shade of a eunuch's glance. There is always a part of you that wants to go back, and another part that whispers, "You're here now, play the game." Or get played. The harem at night is an arena, except instead of swords, everyone wields secrets and the softest hints of perfume. You learn not to trust anyone, but you also learn that sometimes an alliance is the only raft you have when the current shifts. A new sound, now a door down the hall creaks open. Someone's name is whispered, not yours. You sense relief and disappointment tumbling together, making a mess of your insides. You don't know if you want to be chosen or left behind. Both options feel like losing. You press your hand over your heart, feeling its frantic thump. as if your chest is a drum calling out to whichever fate is passing by. Aishi mumbles in her sleep, some tangled dream about figs and dancing. You almost laugh. You wonder if anyone in the palace has actually danced for joy, or if all the dancing here is for survival. Your eyes drift to the note by your pillow. Now, finally. You unfold it, careful not to tear the delicate paper. It's a single line, elegantly penned, anonymous, be ready, for what? When no signature, no clue. The words swirl in your mind, a secret that's more burden than blessing. Time blurs. The moon slips across your window. The lamp flickers low. You find yourself slipping sideways into half-dreams, figs and pearls and velvet slippers. Voices at the edge of sense, all threatening to tip you over into the current of whatever tomorrow brings. You think of all the other women, each caught in her own web of hopes and plans. You wonder who they pray for at night themselves, the Sultan, their lost homes, or maybe just the faint chance of one quiet morning when nobody is watching. You wonder if any of them ever truly rest, or if sleep here is just a place to hide from the noise. Night in the harem is endless, or so it feels. It's a time of waiting, of not knowing, of finding a scrap of comfort in the soft clink of a distant fountain, or the warmth of a borrowed blanket. It's listening for footsteps, for your name, for a future you can neither escape nor embrace. Somewhere, a bird calls, the sky grows faintly gray. Another night survived. You roll over, careful not to disturb Aisha, and tuck the note beneath your pillow, a tiny secret against the vast machine of palace life. A hush, and you breathe. For now. Let's not kid ourselves, you could line every hall in Topkapi Palace with roses, hang 100 crystal lamps, and train 1,000 silk-draped concubines to sing like nightingales. But none of it would matter more than the sound of a eunuch's knock at midnight. That knock, sometimes soft as moth wings, sometimes bold as a storm, has the power to scramble every plan and promise you made in daylight. And tonight, as the harem settles into its uneasy hush, you know it could be your name on the list, your door that swings open. You lie there, staring up at the embroidered canopy above your bed, tracing imaginary patterns through the moonlight and waiting for your heart to settle into something resembling calm. There is nothing left to do, no more lessons to recite, no more apricots to count, no more rumors to tuck behind your ear for safekeeping. Night in the harem is a holding pattern, like circling a runway, but never sure if you'll be asked to land or disappear into the clouds. Somewhere in the dark, a girl coughs. Someone else whispers a prayer. You hear the subtle scuff of slippers in the hallway and imagine the eunuch tall, severe, unreadable, moving from room to room. A shadow with keys. Every night, the Sultan's choices are a mystery, part whim, part calculation, part cosmic joke. Some say he consults the stars, others that the Valid Sultan tips the scales with a lifted eyebrow. You suspect that sometimes. It all comes down to who didn't spill sherbet at dinner. Tonight, your turn comes. It always comes eventually, doesn't it? The knock is so soft you almost think you dreamed it, but your name, you're new. Careful. Palace-assigned name slips through the crack in the door with a reverence that makes your breath catch. You rise. Suddenly all nerves and silk and hope and dread braided together. There's no time to fuss over your hair. An attendant smooths your veil, dabs another drop of rose oil behind your ears, and presses a quick, silent blessing into your palm. You follow the eunuch through corridors that seem longer at night, past lamps that throw shadows as sharp as secrets. The palace at this hour is a different world, cool, echoing, full of possibility and peril. Every column and mosaic seems to watch you pass. You catch sight of your own reflection in a polished brass basin. And for a moment, you don't recognize her? That girl walking straight-backed, eyes forward, balancing poise and terror like a tray of crystal goblets. You reach a door you've never been through before. The eunuch bows, disappears. There's a final check from a senior attendant, veil straight, voice low, speak when spoken to, smile, but not too much. For the love of Allah, don't trip. A breath, and the door swings open. Suddenly, you're inside a chamber as bright as noon, lit with lamps and heavy with incense, the air thick with the fragrance of sandalwood and something else you can't quite name, ambition. Maybe, or destiny, or just really expensive soap. And there he is, the Sultan, the man at the center of every whispered story, every plotted alliance. He sits surrounded by velvet cushions, his robe embroidered with gold, his gaze impossible to read. He looks at you, not through you, not past you, but at you, for a moment. You wonder if you're meant to feel seen or invisible. You hope, with every careful fiber of your being, that you are just interesting enough, just composed enough, to survive whatever comes next. He asks your name, the new one. Not the one your mother cried over, not the one you still whisper to yourself when homesickness bites deep. You answer, voice steady, eyes lowered just enough to signal respect. Not subservience. He asks where you're from, what poetry you like, if you can play the lute, if you believe in fate. You try to answer with a grace you barely believe in, spinning your story into something palatable, mysterious, maybe even clever. He hands you a fig, just one, plump and shining. Palace code. Every gesture is a metaphor. Is this a test and a reward, or just a man who likes figs? You peel it with careful hands, offer a reply about sweet things hiding bitterness, and hope it sounds wise, or at least hungry in an elegant way. The rest of the night is a blur music from behind a screen, a bowl of sherbet you don't finish, a half-remembered poem recited between sips of coffee. The Sultan listens, nods, lets the silences stretch. Some are comfortable. Some feel like the pause before a verdict. You realize that in this room, history can turn on a single misstep, a wrong word, a careless glance. When you are dismissed, it is with a nod, no fanfare, no promises. You are led back down those endless halls, the lamp in the eunuch's hand bobbing ahead of you, casting strange shapes on the tiled walls. You walk a little softer, trying not to wake the sleeping ambitions all around you. You're back in your chamber before dawn, still dizzy from the shift one moment, just another face in the crowd. The next, a potential story for the ages. Inside, AC is pretending to sleep, but you know she's awake, listening. You change quietly, slip between the sheets, the taste of fig still lingering on your tongue. What does it mean? You wonder. To be chosen, to be noticed, to be sent back with nothing more than a single fruit and a new notch in the endless tally of palace intrigue. You stare at the ceiling, waiting for your heartbeat to slow, for your breath to even out, for the world to spin back into its regular, complicated orbit. You are both relieved and unsettled. You survived, but now, the rules have changed. The next day, your seat at breakfast is a little closer to the center. Your sherbet is colder. A servant leaves a pomegranate on your tray, subtle as a sledgehammer. The women you ignored before are suddenly eager to share their favorite verses. Your enemies are quieter, but their eyes are sharp as ever. The harem is a ladder, and you, for better or worse, have just climbed a rung, and now, you wait for whatever comes next. A hush, and you breathe, for tonight. You are still in the game. Sunrise creeps in like a nosy neighbor, squeezing gold between the latticework of your chamber and nudging you back to the present. You're not sure you slept. Maybe you hovered somewhere between a dream of figs and a nightmare of glances either way. You open your eyes and sense, instantly, that the world is a little different today. The same jasmine wafts through the hall, the same voices rustle in the washroom, but every note carries an extra edge, like silk hiding a blade. You rise carefully. There's a new cushion at the end of your bed, pearls at your collar. Your robe seems brighter, or maybe it's just your nerves on high alert, scanning for the tiniest hint of change. There's no official announcement in the harem, no parade of eunuchs with trumpets blaring, no golden scroll with your name on it. Instead, the shifts are subtler and much, much more dangerous. At breakfast, you spot it right away. Your seat is closer to the fountain, where the sun catches the crystal glasses and makes everyone squint, just a little good for hiding quick glances, bad for secrets. The porridge on your tray is smoother, the honey sweeter, the sherbet colder than you've ever tasted. Luxury here isn't about volume, It's about the little things, the details only the trained and the desperate notice. You catch sight of Zeynep, who used to laugh too loudly at the lute player's jokes. Today she's silent, eyes down, stirring her pomegranate seeds like a fortune teller who doesn't like the cards. On your left, Aylin, once the unofficial queen of breakfast politics, now offers you a folded napkin and a smile that says, "I'm your friend until you slip." She compliments your embroidery. Yesterday she swore you couldn't even thread a needle. Welcome to the Upside Down. You say very little, words, at this hour. Are precious stones best left unspent, unless you know their worth? Around you, the atmosphere sizzles, not with joy, but with curiosity and calculation. Have you been chosen? Did you please the Sultan? Are you a new favorite, or just this week's rumor? No one asks directly. That would be vulgar. Instead, it's all in the sidelong glances, the way the sweetmeats are arranged just so on your plate, the pause when you reach for a second fig. The kitchen girls, normally invisible, start giggling as you pass. One hands you an extra slice of bread and whispers a hasty mashallah, as if good luck can stick to you by proximity. Another drops her tray on purpose and mutters something about snakes and silk, careful. She warns you without looking up. Who puts things in your hand when they can't say it to your face? You tuck the bread away and nod, grateful and a little wary. In top kappa, even crumbs can carry messages. You spend the rest of the morning weaving through lessons and duties, your mind a hummingbird darting from fear to pride and back again. The embroidery hoop is a circle of questions. Who will visit you today? Will you be summoned for tea with the Valid Sultan? Will the other concubines try to trip you literally or figuratively on your climb up the invisible palace ladder? You keep your stitches small, your answers smaller, and your gaze trained on the edge of the carpet, where the real stories are swept. But the pressure isn't all subtle. After lunch, you're called aside by the sternest of the black eunuchs, the one who could silence a fountain just by looking at it. He doesn't smile. He simply tells you that you've been assigned new quarters, closer to the inner courtyard, a space with better light and a slightly fresher breeze. Translation: you're under surveillance now, and everyone knows it. Moving rooms is not a private affair. The other women watch as you gather your things, mostly folded linens, a few bits of jewelry, some pressed rose petals, and a single note from your roommate, if you get famous. Don't forget me. If you disappear, I never knew you. Your new chamber has a real mirror. It doesn't warp your face into a potato. You take this as both a compliment and a warning. There's a knock, not the fateful midnight tap, but a daytime invitation embroidered card, perfumed, signed by one of the Sultan's favored consorts. You're invited for tea. This is like being summoned to sit in the viper's nest and being offered your choice of chair. You dress with care, choosing a robe that says respectful and a hairpin that says not plotting. Yet, the tea room is a miniature palace within a palace, all mother-of-pearl inlay and cushions that swallow you whole. The consort reclines as if she's never been upright a day in her life, a vision of effortless poise and possible menace. She pours the tea herself, a symbolic gesture that could mean anything from welcome to, "I want to see your hands shake." You steady your cup, thank her, and answer her questions with just enough wit to seem clever, but not so much as to seem threatening. She speaks in riddles. You reply with proverbs. The conversation is a chess match played on a velvet board. She mentions she's heard of your good fortune, that the Sultan likes new faces, that harem history is a wheel, always turning. You nod, smile, and pretend not to notice that every other word could be a warning, a recruitment, or an invitation to disaster. You return to your new room, tired in ways that go beyond muscle and bone. The corridors feel longer. Every face you pass is a mystery. Every glance a story you'll never fully unravel. There is a velvet box on your pillow, another gift, another question. Inside, a bracelet of turquoise and gold, beautiful and alarming. No note? Of course. Only the certainty that the eyes watching you now are older, sharper, and less forgiving. You lie down, stare at the unblemished ceiling, and wonder what it means to be on the rise in a place where the higher you climb, the farther there is to fall. You survived the night. Now, you must survive the morning after, in the harem. New status is just another word for new danger. A hush. And you breathe. Tomorrow the game begins again. There's a different quality to the air today. Something you sense the moment you step into the main hall. Maybe it's the faint hush that follows you, the servant's glances bouncing off your shoulders, or the slow, deliberate way the senior concubines arrange themselves along the divans, each one careful not to seem too eager, but not quite able to look away. You are more visible now, and that, in this palace, is a weather pattern all its own. Then it happens. The air shifts, the conversations wilt, and a ripple passes through the crowd like a sudden gust in a field of tall grass. The Valide Sultan, the Sultan's mother, glides into the room. She doesn't walk, she appears, like a force of nature in a silken veil, her eyes sharp enough to cut through the morning light. They say she runs the harem with a smile and an iron fist. Though today you're not sure about the smile. Maybe it's hidden somewhere under all those pearls. You keep your head lowered, just as you were taught. Eyes up is bold, eyes down is meek. You want the sweet spot humble, but not invisible, respectful, but not cringing. The valide pauses, and for a moment, the world shrinks to a pinpoint of anticipation. She looks at you, not a glance, not a passing flicker, but the full measured gaze of a woman who has survived more palace storms than you've had hot dinners. Internally, you panic. Externally, you bow. The room seems to hold its breath. The valide's steward, a woman whose entire personality is composed of "don't mess with me," steps forward and delivers a message with all the ceremony of a royal proclamation. You are invited to assist the Valide Sultan with a charitable sewing project this afternoon. You return to your chamber with your heart thudding. You change your robe 3 times. Too dull is disrespectful. Too bright is arrogant. You settle for elegant understatement and hope the sleeves don't drag through the embroidery hoop. Your roommate peers at you like you're about to jump off the palace roof. She looked at you. She whispers. And you nod. Because, well, what else can you do when you enter the valide's quarters? It feels like stepping onto a stage where you forgot your lines. The air is scented with rose and sandalwood. The older concubines are already seated, their needles flashing in and out of fabric with terrifying precision. The valide sits at the center, draped in silks so intricate they probably have their own backstory. She nods to acknowledge your arrival, not warmly, not coldly, just with the composure of someone who's had a lifetime to perfect the art of the neutral gesture. You take your place, arrange your work, and try very hard not to stab yourself with a needle. The conversation, polite and superficial at first, circles around favorite surahs, the best pomegranate vendors, the intricacies of palace life. But underneath, there's an unmistakable tension like a chess game where you're not sure which piece you are, occasionally. The valide asks you a question. Where were you educated? What's your favorite story from the Quran? Have you ever met anyone who truly understands politics? You answer carefully, never too confidently, never too unsure. You quote a little poetry, throw in a proverb or two. The reed bends but does not break. Thank you very much. And do your best impression of a well-bred. Unambitious nobody. Some of the women test you with questions of their own. One asks how you would handle a servant who gossips. Another wonders aloud if you miss your old life. You answer with polite evasions and smiles that could mean anything. Everyone is watching, but no one watches more than the valide. You feel her gaze measuring not just your words, but the way you hold your needle, the angle of your chin, the humility or lack thereof in your posture. An hour passes, or maybe it's a year. You lose track when the sewing is done. The valide dismisses you with a soft word. You bow again, then once more for good measure. As you step out of the room, your legs nearly buckle with relief. Back in your chamber, you replay every moment, every question, every glance. Was the valide pleased? Did you say too much? Too little? Did you blink at the wrong time? Your roommate greets you like you've just survived a thunderstorm. You're alive, she says, half mocking, half genuine. And you both collapse into giggles, the closest thing to freedom you'll find all day. But the ripples keep spreading. The next morning, a steward nods at you in the hallway. The kitchen staff offers you the best bread. Unasked, you overhear your name whispered sometimes with respect, sometimes with a question mark, always with a sense that you've crossed a threshold you can never uncross. You begin to notice the palace dividing into new camps, the friendly opportunists. Now, even friendlier, the silent threats, who watch you with unreadable eyes, and the one terrifying girl who seems to live on melon and cold revenge. You navigate them all, not with words, but with gestures bows that say, I respect you, eyes that murmur, but don't think I won't outlast you. Gifts start appearing, a pearl on your caftan, a new hair ribbon, a better mirror. Each is both an honor and a warning. In Topkapi, a gift means you've been marked, sometimes for promotion, sometimes for demolition. You wear your pearls carefully, like armor. There's no applause when the Valide notices you, no parade, no fireworks, not even a real smile. There's only the long, silent corridor back to your room, the feel of every gaze on your back, and the certainty that you are now playing a different game, one where the stakes are higher and the ground less steady. A pause, the hush of rose-scented air, and you breathe. So here you are, summoned by one of the Sultan's favored consorts, a woman whose name drifts through the harem like a rumor wearing silk slippers. The invitation arrives by way of a servant girl, who looks as if she'd rather be anywhere else, and who doesn't even meet your eyes when she presses the folded card into your hand, sealed with a delicate blue wax that means only one thing. Whatever you do next will be noticed. You stare at the invitation, half expecting it to start whispering dire warnings. But it's just paper expensive, perfumed, and somehow more intimidating than a royal decree. Your roommate gasps. She says the consort has a reputation sometimes benevolent, sometimes terrifying, always several moves ahead of everyone else. You know the stories, of course. They're like harem bedtime tales, but with more intrigue and less chance of a happy ending. What do you wear? That's the question that makes or unmakes a career in this place. Too elaborate, and you're challenging her. Too plain, and you're insulting her taste. You choose something in the middle, a subtle lavender robe, just enough embroidery to show you care, a single strand of pearls, and that one hairpin your mother gave you, the only thing here that still feels like home. Your hands tremble as you arrange it all, trying to remember what it felt like to be just another anonymous face in the crowd. The walk to her rooms is a journey all its own, a parade of knowing looks and veiled glances, of hushed conversations that die as you approach, of senior eunuchs nodding with that infuriating half-smile that says, I know something you don't. When you reach the door, a servant bows you in, and you step into the sort of chamber you've only glimpsed in your more ambitious daydreams, heavy curtains embroidered with gold thread, carpets thick enough to lose your shoes in, and a spread of pastries so beautiful you want to weep for your village baker. The consort sits at the low table, pouring tea with the effortless elegance of someone who has never had to scrub her own hands clean of garden dirt. She gestures for you to join her, and you do, careful to bow with just the right degree of deference. Not too much she's not the Valide Sultan, but just enough to acknowledge the gap between your worlds. Her smile is enigmatic, the sort that could mean anything from welcome to warning. I hear you've been noticed, she says. Her voice is smooth as the rose jam on the table. By important eyes? You nod. Because what else is there to do? She gestures for you to take tea, and you do, hands steady despite the thumping of your heart. Conversation drifts through poetry, music, the finer points of palace etiquette. But underneath it all is a current of something sharper. Every compliment feels like a chess move. Every observation is weighted. She asks about your lessons, your background, your thoughts on the weather. Each question, you suspect, has less to do with curiosity and more to do with measuring you for potential usefulness or threat. You're careful with your answers, a little cleverness, but not enough to be threatening, a little humility, but not so much that you seem dull. You share a story from your childhood, a simple tale of picking figs in the sun, laughter at the riverbank, the memory of your mother singing old songs, watching her face for any sign of judgment. She nods, perhaps approvingly, perhaps not. You sip your tea, which tastes faintly of cardamom and anxiety. The pastries are delicate and sweet, but every bite is a reminder that nothing here is ever truly free. The consort asks if you play any instruments. You admit to a few clumsy attempts at the lute, which she finds amusing. Perhaps you'll perform for us one evening, she says, and you can't tell if that's a promise or a threat. The room is silent for a moment, one of those silences so full of possibility it feels like standing on the edge of a precipice. Then she leans in, voice low and confiding, and offers a few words of advice about survival. Never let anyone see your true ambition, she says, eyes glinting, and never accept a gift without understanding the strings attached. You nod, tucking that advice away in the secret scroll of your mind. More tea is poured, more pleasantries exchanged. She tells you about her own arrival at court, how she learned to smile without revealing too much, how she found allies among the quietest girls, how she survived her own first tea with a consort years ago. There's warmth in her words, but also a steely undercurrent. She didn't get here by accident. She chose every step with care. As the visit draws to a close, she gives you a small token, a silk handkerchief, embroidered with tulips. The gesture is both a compliment and a warning. You're on her radar now, and that can mean protection, opportunity, or a target on your back. You bow, thank her, and retreat, the handkerchief burning like a secret in your palm. Back in your room, your roommate peppers you with questions. What did she say? What did she give you? Are you in her favor now, or has she marked you for something darker? You shrug, smile, and slip the handkerchief into your chest of linens, unsure whether to be grateful or afraid. The next morning, gossip spreads like the smell of cinnamon through the harem. Some say you've been offered mentorship. Others whisper about secret alliances. A few, the ambitious ones, look at you with envy, or is it fear? You keep your expression bland, your words careful, your posture neutral. In the palace, words are weapons, gifts are leashes, and every tea shared with a consort is another lesson in the art of survival. You've learned to swim with sharks, or at least to keep your head above water, and your secrets tucked safely behind a smile, a pause, a hush, the distant clink of teacups fading into the golden afternoon. It's a soft, golden afternoon when you're summoned to the music chamber. And if you thought tea with a consort was nerve-wracking, wait until you find yourself in a room full of senior concubines with more stories than a palace library. You walk there with careful steps, trailing your hand along a cool wall, and you catch the faintest echo of lute strings, laughter, and that low, knowing murmur that means something important is about to happen. Though what? No one ever says outright. The music chamber is less a room than an atmosphere, a fragrant fog of rosewater and saffron, swirling with the hum of voices and the flutter of silk. Pillows are scattered everywhere, some look inviting. Others feel like thrones built for watching, judging, weighing every move. At the center sits an old, elegant instrument, lacquered black and inlaid with mother of pearl, as if reminding you that art and beauty are as much tools of power here as gossip and gold. Today, you're not here to perform, not yet. You're here to listen, to observe, and, if you're lucky, to pass a test that isn't officially announced, but that everyone understands. The senior concubines are all here, the poetry expert with the perpetual half-smile, the one whose laughter always comes just a second too late, the formidable matron with a voice like aged honey and the eyes of a chess master. Each one has survived 100 palace storms and wears her rank not as a badge, but as a natural extension of her being. You take your seat neither too close to the center nor too far at the edge. You want to be seen, but not too seen. You want to listen, but not eavesdrop. That's a skill you're learning how to blend in like a shadow at sunset. Present enough to be remembered, forgettable enough to avoid threats. Tea is poured, light and fragrant, and you hold the cup the way you were taught, thumb and forefinger, just so. The rim never quite touching your lips until someone else sips first. There are rules here, unspoken and ancient. You follow them with a beginner's hope and an instinct that's growing keener with every day. The conversation drifts like music, from Rumi's verses to the virtues of rose jam, from the peculiarities of the Valid Sultan's taste in slippers to the latest diplomatic marriage rumors. You nod at the right moments, let your smile float, and laugh softly at the story of a cat who once sneaked into the Sultan's bedchamber and caused a scandal only resolved by the intervention of 3 eunuchs. 2 frightened attendants, and a bowl of milk. It's a palace legend, retold every year. And everyone laughs not because it's funny, but because it's tradition. Then comes the moment, a question, aimed at you, from the poetry expert. Do you have a favorite line of verse, she asks, as if she's simply curious. You know better. You feel a dozen eyes settle on you, some curious, some measuring. The right answer will mark you as thoughtful. The wrong one is either a threat or a disappointment. You pause. A pause is always dangerous, but here, the right pause is power. You select a line one about the scent of jasmine at dusk. From a poem your mother once sang while darning your father's shirt. You say it softly, in Persian, then translate with care. The poetry expert nods. Satisfied, another woman, the one with the sharp laugh, raises an eyebrow and asks, "And what do you think it means?" Now you're on thinner ice, but you don't flinch, you say. It's about longing how beauty can be as fleeting as a scent on the night air. The matron's lips curve in the faintest of approvals. You've passed, for now. The conversation moves on, but now you're part of it. The lute is passed around, each woman playing a note or two, sometimes singing a line, sometimes offering a memory from her home country Georgia, Circassia, Albania, Egypt. You sense the quiet ache in these songs, the memories hidden in half smiles, the rivalry lurking beneath every compliment. At one point, the conversation turns to palace charity work. The matron asks what you think of the Valid Sultan's newest project, embroidered prayer cloths for widows of fallen janissaries. You keep your answer humble. You praise the Valid's generosity. Say something about how charity is a blessing to both giver and receiver, and you're careful not to overreach. Words, here, are arrows. You want yours to land softly, not draw blood. The afternoon deepens. Candied fruits are passed around, apricots, figs, dates filled with walnuts and sprinkled with cinnamon. You take only one. 2 would be greedy. None would be strange. The taste is sweet and a little gritty. And you focus on the texture, letting your mind rest for a moment, all around you. The conversation ebbs and flows, sometimes cutting, sometimes gentle, always layered with meaning. You realize this is a performance, a dance of alliances and rivalries. And the music isn't just played on instruments, it's played on people. The session ends with a brief recitation, each woman offering a proverb or saying from her homeland. When your turn comes, you remember one your grandmother always said, "A quiet river runs deep." The matron's gaze lingers on you, and you wonder if she heard more in your words than you intended. You leave the music chamber lighter than you arrived, but with new names in your mental ledger, potential friends, possible foes, women to watch, women to emulate, and women to fear. You feel the weight of having spoken, the risk and reward of having let your voice be heard. The palace air smells different now, somehow sharper, as if the walls themselves were listening, taking notes for the next round. Back in your chamber, you replay every moment, every word, every sideways glance. You realize you're learning, slowly, to shape your own legend, to play the game not only with your face and your robe and your posture, but with your words and your silences. It's a power as real as jewels or gold, maybe more. A hush falls as you close your eyes, hearing, just for a moment, the echo of your grandmother's proverb, soft, wise, and full of unseen depths. You think you're starting to get the hang of it, this palace dance of word and silence, favor and caution, and then, just as the morning light tiptoes over the domes and splashes a wash of gold through your tiny window, you spot something you absolutely did not leave behind, a small velvet box. Nestled right on your pillow, it is the color of dried rose petals, and it sits there as innocently as a sleeping cat. Of course, nothing in the Topkapi harem is ever that innocent. Your heart jumps, does a little sideways dance. The room is empty, your roommate is gone, probably to her embroidery lesson or the morning roll call of faces. The air smells faintly of orange blossom and the wax of last night's lantern. The box is tied with a neat ribbon, and you hesitate for a long moment before touching it, as if it might spring open and reveal either treasure or trouble. Both are equally likely here. You untie the ribbon, slow as a cat burglar, and crack the lid. Inside, lying on a swatch of blue silk, is a bracelet delicate, golden, with turquoise stones that shimmer like bits of the Bosphorus under sunlight. The gold filigree is so fine you wonder whose hands, whose patience, crafted it, a gift, then, but from whom, and, more importantly, why you scan your memory for anyone who might wish you well, or ill, or merely want to claim you, if only for a week. You glance over your shoulder, old habit, born of stories whispered after dark. No one there, just you and a bracelet that is already making you part of a story someone else is writing. You slip it on, because in the harem, refusing a gift is as risky as accepting it. Now you wear someone's intentions on your wrist, when your roommate returns. She barely raises an eyebrow. Pretty, she says, in a voice that tells you nothing. She does not ask questions. That's either good manners or a deep commitment to plausible deniability. It takes less than an hour for the rumors to begin. You pass the marble fountain on the way to your lessons, and a servant girl is bent over her pail, talking in a voice just loud enough for you to hear. Did you see? She got a gift. Another girl, older and shrewder, answers, from whom? The first shrug she didn't say, which, as you're learning, is the same as saying everyone should assume the worst, or, more dangerously, the most interesting. By lunchtime, your bracelet is famous. Did you hear? Says one girl near the kitchen, eyes sharp as lemon zest. She received a secret message by afternoon. The tale has blossomed now you have received a hidden proposal, or perhaps an heirloom passed down from the Valide Sultan herself, or even a warning disguised as jewelry. All untrue, all dangerously believable. The Topkapi harem runs on rumors the way a baker runs on flour. Sometimes you're the pastry, sometimes you're the oven, and sometimes you're just left to burn. During your embroidery lesson, you sense glances darting toward your wrist. The instructor, old and unimpressed by palace politics, simply says, "Be careful not to snag the thread." You nod. But you notice she's watching you out of the corner of her eye, as if recalling some ancient scandal, long ago. That also began with a piece of jewelry. Then, as you head for afternoon prayers, a servant girl you've barely noticed before stumbles near you, drops a tray, and mutters just loudly enough for you to hear. Careful who puts things in your hand when they can't say it to your face. She's up and gone before you can reply. You file the warning away, another pebble in your growing heap of caution. You keep the bracelet on. Of course, taking it off would be admitting fear or worse, signaling you know something more than you do. But that night, you sleep with it tucked under your pillow, half afraid of what it might mean, half afraid of what it might cost not to wear it. By the next morning, every hallway is whispering. Your name flutters through conversations like a lost feather. Some girls now offer you tentative smiles. Maybe you're rising, maybe you're falling, but no one wants to guess out loud. Others look at you with that special harem mix of curiosity and calculation, as if weighing whether to offer friendship or step out of your way. Even your enemies, the ones who used to glare, now practice politeness so smooth it could cut glass. At breakfast, your tray has a few extra pomegranate seeds, a message as old as palace intrigue. Pomegranate is the fruit of fertility, of power and luck, as subtle as a bullhorn in these corridors. You let it sit on the tray, eating around it, pretending not to notice, even as your thoughts whir like a potter's wheel. Mid-morning brings a visit from the eunuch with the sharpest eyes and the most unreadable face. He says nothing about the bracelet, only hands you a letter with a blue wax seal, the imperial color. The script is elegant, the message brief. You are to be elevated, new quarters, closer to the Sultan's wing. It is, on paper, a promotion. In reality, it is just a different flavor of risk. You take the letter and bow, keeping your face smooth. The eunuch's gaze lingers a second too long. Maybe he knows who sent the bracelet. Maybe he doesn't. Either way, you have until sunset to reply. The day is spent in a fog of decision. You walk the gardens, the places where you once hid in the shadow of elder concubines, and you realize everything looks smaller, closer, the air tinged with tulips and nervous hope. Every gift is a leash, every rumor a thread, and every warning a chance to tangle yourself in someone else's plans. As the sun dips below the palace domes, you touch the bracelet, feel the weight of invisible strings. and wonder not for the first time if the next step will lift you higher or pull you under. You don't know. You only know you will walk forward, because in top copy, even standing still is a gamble, and as the muezzin's call winds through the marble halls, you close your eyes and breathe, letting the stories swirl around you, some true, some twisted, all binding you tighter to the fate you're learning to shape. One day, one rumor, one beautiful, dangerous gift at a time. There are promotions, and then there are promotions, and in the Ottoman Harem, you quickly learn which is which. A move closer to the Sultan's quarters might sound like good fortune in a folktale, but here, it's as nerve-wracking as being handed the starring role in a play where the script is written in real time by people you've never met and whose motives you can't begin to guess. Suddenly, the same gardens where you once slipped unnoticed among a tide of anonymous silk slippers become an open stage, and your name, your new, carefully chosen, Ottoman name seems to hang in the air above every flower bed. You spend the morning pacing the garden paths, caught between sunlight and shadow, each step crunching lightly on the gravel as you try to rehearse what you'll say should anyone ask how you feel about your elevation. But no one does, not directly. The senior concubines glance your way with that veteran blend of interest and memory, perhaps recalling their own days as rising stars, or, more likely, counting how many petals fall before the bloom begins to fade. You pass a knot of younger girls embroidering under a fig tree, and you catch your name, just a whisper, followed by a giggle stifled with the back of a hand. Even the gardeners seem to eye you with a mixture of awe and superstitious caution, as if you might start floating any minute or suddenly turn into a cautionary tale. The palace air is soft with the scent of watered earth and the heavy perfume of lilac and rose, mingling with a subtler undertone of expectation. You sit for a moment beside a marble fountain where goldfish flicker just below the surface, darting in and out of shadows. You imagine your own fate swimming like that, visible for a moment, then vanishing, always aware of the hook that could drop without warning. Around you, the garden bustles with life, a laughing bird in the magnolia tree, a pair of old women discussing who stole whose pomegranate, a eunuch's measured footsteps approaching and receding in the mosaic-tiled distance. It would be peaceful, you suppose, if you could turn off your ears. You try to keep your hands steady as you study your new quarters, which are indeed more spacious, with a higher window admitting a bold patch of light and a view of the palace's inner courtyards. The furniture is finer, the pillows plumper, and there is a mirror that does not warp your face into a medieval saint, which in this place feels like a minor miracle. Still, you are sharply aware that these luxuries come not as gifts, but as investments, each one more reason to watch your step. No one will ever tell you this out loud, but every comfort in the harem is double-edged. The softer the mattress, the harder the fall. There is a knock at your door, not a friend's tap or a eunuch's businesslike thump, but something more deliberate, the kind that comes with consequences. You are invited to tea by one of the Sultan's favored consorts, a woman whose name is spoken in the harem like a lullaby with a razor hidden in the last note. She is powerful, poised, and if rumors are to be believed, the reason several former upstarts are now embroidering in distant provinces or pouring rosewater in bathhouses for the rest of their days. You dress with ruthless calculation, not too opulent, lest she think you are challenging her, not too drab, lest she suspect you're ungrateful or plotting an exit. You settle for a look that says elegance with plausible humility, pinning up your hair with a small pearl comb, a tiny, shining flag of neutrality. The tea room is cool and softly lit, perfumed with cardamom and the subtle tension that arises when two ambitious souls meet under the guise of sisterly conversation. The favored consort reclines, a vision in emerald silk, her eyes the color of old secrets. She pours the tea herself, an act that might mean generosity, might mean control, or might mean nothing at all. You accept the cup, steady as you can. The conversation dances. She asks about your embroidery, your favorite lines of poetry, the origin of your accent, and what you think of the palace gardens. You answer carefully, aware that each phrase is a stepping stone across a river of crocodiles. She mentions, casually, how quickly people can rise and how quickly they can be forgotten. Her smile is polite, her eyes sharp as bird claws. She reminds you that the higher you climb, the more eyes are on you, not all of them friendly. The pomegranate tree grows many fruit. She murmurs, some ripen, some fall, some feed the birds. You sip your tea, nod, and file every syllable away for future use. This is not just a chat, it's a weighing, a sizing up, a polite little duel. You know better than to let your guard down. When she dismisses you with a smile that could freeze the Bosphorus, you bow and leave, feeling as if you've crossed a rope bridge in the dark, somehow still standing. Back in your chamber, you find a fresh tray of fruit pomegranate, again, and this time a single, perfect pear. Another message, another game. You eat the pear, slowly, savoring its sweetness but watching for the bitterness underneath. The afternoon drifts by in a blur of music practice, whispered conversations, and the soft, eternal sound of slippers on polished tile. You keep your voice low, your laughter gentle, your eyes on the embroidery in your lap. The key now is not to stand out too much, not to shrink too far, like the garden goldfish. You want to be visible, but never the one closest to the net. Evening comes with a cool breeze and the distant call of prayer. You walk once more through the gardens, noting how the light slants gold across the courtyards and how your own shadow seems longer than before. Girls nod to you as you pass, their faces polite, their eyes measuring. Somewhere, a new rumor is being born, and as night falls, you sit by your window, looking down on the palace lights, and you realize that, for now at least, you are still part of the story, no longer anonymous, not yet infamous, always watched. You let out a quiet breath, a small, private sigh, and tell yourself one day at a time, one step, one smile, one secret until the next turn of the wheel. The moon rises, somewhere in the garden. You hear the hush of a fountain, the soft laughter of women who know how fragile the climb can be. You lean into the night, into the delicate, unsteady peace that comes with survival for today. If there's one thing in the Ottoman palace that can make even the bravest concubine's knees go weak, it's not the sultan's gaze or a gold-threaded robe. It's the full, direct attention of the valide sultan. Imagine being singled out by the CEO, the high priestess, and your most intimidating aunt, all rolled into one formidable, jewel-bedecked matriarch whose influence can rearrange fates before breakfast. The valide doesn't run the harem, she is the harem, and everyone else just rents space in her shadow. It starts with a look, not a casual glance, not a polite acknowledgement, but a cool, measured study that lasts precisely 3 seconds longer than is comfortable. Maybe you're pouring tea for the sewing circle, or picking a bit of lint off your sleeve, and suddenly you realize you're being observed like a rare coin, or perhaps a strange bug. In that moment, you wish you'd picked a different color sash, or maybe never learned to walk upright. Rumors swirl around the Valide Sultan like perfume and dread. Some say she can read lies the way other women read fortune cookies. Others insist she once arranged a marriage and a coup before her first cup of coffee. All you know is that, today, you are invited to participate in one of her charitable sewing projects, a palace tradition that sounds innocuous enough. But you know better. It's the Ottoman version of a job interview mixed with a lie detector test. Conducted in a room that smells faintly of incense, old silk, and ambition. You arrive, punctual but not desperate, with your embroidery kit tucked under one arm and your heart fluttering like a moth inside your chest. The chamber is plush, circled by older concubines and steely-eyed aunties who have survived enough plot twists to fill a shelf of spicy novels. The valide sits at the head of it all, surrounded by cushions, pearls, and the sort of silence that dares anyone to breathe too loudly. You take your seat, knees together, chin down, as if you're auditioning for a role called modesty, with a twist of not threatening. You thread your needle, keeping your gaze demurely lowered, and pretend you don't notice the strategic gaps in conversation, those lulls designed to see who cracks first and babbles. Not you. You vow, not today. The valide asks questions. Where did you learn your prayers? What's your favorite verse of the Quran? Have you met anyone who truly understands palace politics? You answer with just the right blend of humility and thoughtfulness, as if you spend your spare time pondering the meaning of life while doing cross-stitch. Every word you offer is weighed, measured, and filed away behind her eyes, which never seem to blink. Occasionally she smiles, not at you, but near you, which in palace terms is basically a standing ovation. The other women nod approvingly, or perhaps warningly, it's hard to tell which. Your hands keep working, the needle slipping through satin like a fish through water, even as your thoughts race in circles. Are you passing the test? Is that a trick question? Is the color of your embroidery thread secretly symbolic? When the session ends, you bow perfect posture, perfect timing, and excuse yourself with the grace of someone who's not sure if she's just been promoted or marked for demotion. As you retreat to your chambers, your roommate gives you a look of pure, wide-eyed awe, the kind reserved for people who have seen the inside of a sultan's treasury and lived to gossip about it. She looked at you. She whispers. You nod, trying to seem nonchalant. But inside, you're replaying every detail, every twitch of the valide's eyebrow, like a chess player haunted by a single risky move. Soon enough. Another knock this time. A message. You are invited to a private tea with one of the Sultan's favorite consorts. Her name floats through the harem like a legend, half lullaby, half cautionary tale. She's a master at the art of diplomacy. Her gifts are subtle, her threats even subtler. The invitation is both a privilege and a test. You accept, of course you do. In the harem, you never say no to a power lunch, especially when the menu includes survival. You spend 20 minutes getting dressed enough to look elegant, not enough to look ambitious. A single pearl, a neat braid, a touch of rose water behind the ears. When you enter the tea room, she's already reclining, draped in a robe embroidered with so many stories, you could spend a year reading them and never finish. She pours the tea herself, an act that's either gracious or menacing, depending on your nerves. The conversation is a dance of compliments and veiled warnings. She remarks on your interesting reputation. She compliments your taste in poetry, while reminding you that taste can be, well, subjective. She tells you how quickly someone can become the darling of the harem, and how quickly that same someone can become yesterday's news. Or, more accurately, last week's rumor. You smile, nod, and answer her questions with the nimbleness of a cat walking a garden wall. Every syllable is a test. Did you make the right impression on the Valide? Will this consort see you as a threat, an ally, or a project at the end? She offers you a sweet locum, dusted with powdered sugar. You take it, say thank you, and try not to choke on the implication. Back in your room, the air is thick with possibility. You're more visible now, in the best and worst ways. The senior concubines nod at you in the hall. Servants bring your food first, with a touch of extra care, and somewhere, you know. A new round of whispers has begun, fluttering through the harem like silk banners in the wind. At night, you lie awake, hearing the hush of fountains, the distant laughter of women who have seen it all. You count your blessings, your allies, and your secrets, for now. You are not just surviving, you are navigating, gliding through a palace where every smile means something, and sometimes nothing at all. The moon rises, pale and steady. You breathe, and you wait. You hear it before you see it. The delicate, hesitant notes of a lute drifting down the hallway, punctuated by the occasional giggle or a breathless pause. The music room of the harem is a realm apart, a place where time unspools in velvet ribbons and where every whispered conversation is layered over a gentle soundtrack of plucked strings, soft flutes, and the tap, tap, tap of gold-threaded slippers. If you're picturing an Ottoman karaoke night, slow down here. Music is both pleasure and performance, a test and a theater, and sometimes just an excuse for a dozen ambitious women to size each other up while pretending to discuss the finer points of Persian poetry. You step inside, arms full of fresh linen, cheeks still a little pink from the Valide's last appraising glance. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of rose attar and simmering apple tea. The older concubines are already in their places, each as regal as a queen in exile, and every one of them an expert at turning the act of sipping sherbet into an act of subtle war. The music teacher, a white-bearded eunuch who claims he once played for the Sultan's grandfather, is coaxing a shy new arrival through the first trembling bars of a song about spring and betrayal. Everyone else pretends not to notice the mistakes, but make no mistake. Every sour note is counted. You settle onto a cushion, folding your legs with the careful grace you've practiced every night in the dark. You hold your instrument, maybe it's a tambourine, maybe just your hands, and wait for the current of the room to sweep you along. Here's the trick: you don't want to stand out. Not yet. But you don't want to fade into the wallpaper either. There's a rhythm to the conversation, a slow dance of questions and answers. Someone asks you where you learned to sing. Your answer is modest, but you let slip a detail about the village mullah who taught you prayers as lullabies. The older women nod, noting the humility, or maybe the ambition. It's impossible to know. Across the room, a senior concubine tells a story about the first time she was summoned to play music for the Sultan, how she dropped her lute, blushed all the way to her ears, and won his laughter with a joke about clumsy fingers and clumsier hearts. Everyone laughs, just enough, and then falls quiet, as if waiting to see which direction the next wind will blow. The music resumes, slow and hypnotic, as the teacher taps out a new rhythm and gestures for you to join in. You try not to let your nerves show, but your hands are a little clammy, and you hope no one notices the faint tremor in your voice. It's in these silences, the spaces between the notes, that the real conversations happen. A glance, a raised eyebrow, the hint of a smile. These are the palace's true languages, and you are still learning your first words. Sometimes someone asks your opinion on a line of poetry or the best way to prepare quince jam. But you know the real question is always, are you clever? Are you safe? Are you a threat? There's a lesson here, and the music teacher knows it. Play only as loudly as you can listen, he says, and the women all nod as if he's just revealed the secret to eternal youth. But what he means is, don't draw attention you can't handle, don't make enemies you can't outrun, and never, ever try to outshine the Sultan's favorite unless you want to find yourself rehearsing for an audience of laundry baskets. The afternoon drifts by. There's laughter, a little too high-pitched to be entirely natural, and the low hum of whispered gossip that seems to cling to the cushions like dust. The windows are flung open, letting in the golden light and the distant shouts of boys training in the outer courtyard. You can almost forget, for a moment, that you are in a palace built on rules and secrets and endless, swirling competition. But then the music stops. An older woman asks, in the softest tone, what you think of the Valide's new charity project. You answer with a compliment carefully phrased. So it sounds sincere but not sycophantic. You describe it as elegant, visionary, and humbling, never committing to an actual opinion, just reflecting the light of the room. This is how you pass the test, you realize. As the conversation shifts to the latest palace rumor, a new shipment of coffee from Yemen, the favorite attendant's mysterious illness, that your name is coming up more often now. Not in anger, not yet, but with the curiosity of people deciding whether you belong in their story, or just on the edges of it. Your goal is to stay in the center just long enough to rise, but not so long as to burn. Evening falls, the lanterns glow, and the music room empties out. The teacher gathers his notes, the older women whisper a final goodbye, and you step into the corridor with a strange sense of satisfaction. You have survived another day in the palace, another test passed. You were neither the star nor the villain, just one more player in a game that never truly ends, tonight. As you settle onto your thin mattress, you hear the faintest echo of a melody you played earlier, sweet, fragile, and gone before you can name it. You let it drift away with the evening breeze, grateful for one more quiet victory, one more chance to learn the music of the palace, a hush, a breath, and the palace, for a moment, is silent. It happens one morning, just as the first sunbeam slants through your narrow window and catches the dust motes swirling above your borrowed pillow. There, nestled on the linen like a relic from another life, sits a small box, velvet soft and the color of dried rose petals. No note, no signature, no hint of who might have left it unless you count the barely disguised smirk of your roommate, who manages to look both deeply uninterested and dangerously invested as you reach for the ribbon. Your hands shake, though you'd never admit it, because in the harem, a gift is rarely just a gift. Maybe it's a favor, maybe it's a leash, maybe it's a warning disguised as generosity, or a leash masquerading as an invitation to a dance you haven't quite learned yet. You open the box, half expecting a whiff of poison or a particularly witty scorpion, and instead, you find a bracelet delicate, gold filigree, set with turquoise stones that gleam like shallow sea pools in the morning light. You blink, almost laugh, then catch yourself. There's a reason they say in the palace, gifts have more teeth than tigers. Your roommate just lifts an eyebrow. Nice color, she mutters, but it's the sort of nice that could mean beware or congratulations or I hope you know how to swim. The box sits heavy in your lap, heavier than the jewelry inside. Word spreads before you've even decided to wear it, by midday, as you pour yourself a cup of sharp, fragrant tea. You hear a pair of junior concubines whispering by the fountain. Did you see what she got from the valide from the Sultan? Or maybe from someone who wants her gone by lunch? The rumor has mutated. Some say the bracelet carries a coded message. Others insist it's a sign you'll be summoned tonight. And at least one wildly creative mind claims it's a centuries-old heirloom, last worn by a consort who vanished after an unfortunate disagreement over pilaf. You try not to show your nerves. You thank the universe for the 100th time that the harem's etiquette lessons included a crash course in emotional poker face. But inside, your mind is a pinwheel of possibility. Who gave it? Why now? Is it a reward, a threat, a test? You wear the bracelet, of course. You have to. To refuse a gift is to insult a giver you may not even know you have. And in this palace, offending the wrong shadow can be as dangerous as offending the Sultan himself. Everywhere you go, eyes follow. In the embroidery room, a senior concubine glances pointedly at your wrist, then at your face, as if checking to see whether you have any idea what you've stepped into. A servant girl accidentally drops a tray next to you and mutters, "Careful who puts things in your hand when they can't say it to your face." You smile, thank her politely, and make a mental note to sleep with the bracelet tucked under your pillow. You can't escape the questions. Did the gift come from the Valide Sultan? That steely-eyed matriarch whose nod can summon or banish a girl with the same flick of her bejeweled fingers? Is it from the Sultan himself? An anonymous token sent ahead of a night that might end in a new chamber, a new set of enemies, a new layer of anxiety. Or worse, could it be from a rival? Someone who wants to stake a claim on your reputation, to mark you as chosen and thus place a target on your back. The truth is, you don't know. In the harem, knowledge is as slippery as rose oil. Every smile is loaded, every glance a ledger entry. You realize, as you walk through the tiled corridors, that you've joined the invisible game, the one where alliances form over pomegranate seeds and betrayals begin with an innocent compliment about your stitching. Late in the afternoon, as the call to prayer floats through the windows and the light turns honeyed and gentle, another message arrives, this time in the form of a folded scrap of paper tucked discreetly into your sewing basket. You are being watched, it reads. In careful, anonymous script. Wear your new adornment well. Not everyone is your friend. You swallow hard, tuck the note deep into your sleeve, and keep your hand steady as you work the needle. Is it a threat? A kindness? Some new kind of test? Here, even good advice can be a double-edged sword. Evening falls, and with it, the tension ratchets up another notch. At dinner, you catch the eye of the powerful consort you once served tea to. She smiles with her lips, not her eyes, and you wonder if she knows more than she's letting on. The meal is a parade of subtle glances and unspoken calculations. The bracelet gleams against your skin, a silent announcement that you are, at least for today, someone to be noticed. When you finally slip back to your quarters, you're exhausted, more from all the watching and being watched than from any real work. Your roommate is already curled up, pretending not to care, but you can feel her attention prickling in the dark. You take off the bracelet, study it for hidden compartments, and find nothing but delicate metalwork and the faintest trace of perfume. You place it beneath your pillow, just in case. Tonight, sleep is a negotiation with your own heartbeat. Every tick of the clock reminding you that tomorrow will bring a new rumor, a new test, maybe even a new gift. But as the palace quiets, as the lamps are snuffed and the fountains outside gurgle in the deepening dusk, you realize something odd despite the anxiety, despite the uncertainty. You feel a sliver of pride. You're still here, still in the game, still wearing your name, whatever it is. Today, like armor, a hush, a breath. The night tucks you in with the softest of warnings. Here, even beauty is a question.